Hi there, Linda Goodall here. Let's talk about jump threads and fonts. I often see complaints on various groups about there's too many jumps in this design and how do I get rid of them and what can I do in my software to eliminate this jump, and this is really awful digitizing, there's just way too many jumps. Well, it might not really be bad digitizing. Let's talk about what a jump is, where they happen, and what you can do about them and what you can't do about them. So first of all, what is a jump? A jump is a connection between one object and the next. So here we have an M, here we have an A, there's a space in between, there's going to be a thread that connects them. So unless your machine trims, there's going to be a jump there. You'll see it on the screen, there'll just be a jump there. There's no other way to get from this letter to this letter. Lettering designs that are going to have a lot of jump stitches, unless you're working with script, which might all be connected. So this design was created in Embrilliance Essentials, and you can see that there are spaces between the letters. In fact, if you created this design in any software, there'd be spaces between the letters. So it's not just Embrilliance. It's how the letters get connected across those spaces that's handled differently depending on the software and how the stitch objects were created. We should really think of a design as one continuous piece of thread from the first stitch to the last stitch. Jump stitches are just really another stitch that connect to the next piece. So this is a bunch of stitches, and we stitch, jump over here. Jump stitches just tend to be longer and visible. So down here with this word, the than, it is a script. And by the time this little satin stitch pushes out, it's going to be so close to there that you would never notice that connection. Likewise, these letters are very close, so you're not going to notice probably connections between those. These other letters, they're going to be longer. Let's turn off 3D so that we can actually see the jump stitches. So all these dotted lines, those are jump stitches. Got a long one there. Got a long one from there to there. Some of these might be long enough that your machine will recognize them and just automatically trim. But these others might not be. So you're going to have jumps. There's no software setting that can reduce long jumps if you don't have object-based elements that can be edited. And even if we did have object-based elements that can be edited in here, you wouldn't be able to do it in Essentials. You'd probably have to do it in Stitch Artist. This design is composed of both native fonts and stitch file fonts, and in both cases, the original entry and exit points placed by the digitizer are frozen because these aren't editable things. By that, I mean you can't go in here and say, I want to move that out point to there, and I want to move that in point to there. What you see is what you get, is basically what's going on here. So the only way you could reduce the appearance of the connections in this software is to redigitize them. And of course, for that you'd need a level of Stitch Artist and you need digitizing skills. So let me point out, while I've created a couple hundred BX fonts, none of the designs in my library use the BX versions. They all use native versions in the original software so that I can control the long jumps, I can control the underlay, I can control all the various attributes of the stitches so that they're optimized at that size and however I created them. The normal way that you have of dealing with jumps is to trim them. Most machines today have trimmers. Basic ones may only trim after a color change, but more advanced ones will trim when the thread is a certain length, and sometimes you can set it in your software or at your machines. So the long jumps, like from here to here, is probably going to trim, and maybe even some of these other ones will trim automatically on your machine. These short ones probably are not going to trim. Some machines will recognize embedded trim commands. When I digitize a design, I will put trim commands where I know I want it to trim, even if it's really short. My 12 needle machine will recognize those trim commands in a DST file, but if I use that same DST file on my Baby Localissimo, it does not see those trims. So if you have short little trims like this in a design, you probably want to trim those, if you're going to trim them, before the next color change. In this design, it doesn't make much difference, but in some designs, it's best to trim at the end of a color change so they don't get sewn over and get too hard to dig out. So if the machine can do trimming for you, I really prefer that, not because I don't want to have to do it myself, but because the machine will pull the thread to the back of the project before trimming and will leave, maybe a 1/4 inch or so of thread tails. And those thread tails are security. Yes, it makes for a nasty looking back, but don't cut those threads because those are your security. If you do have to trim by hand, only trim on the front. That way, when you have the bobbin thread on the back, it will still have a little bit of security. Also, you can use the bobbin thread to pull the little nubbin that's left there so that it's on the back and not sticking up on the front. I like to trim, so if I have to trim, say between there, I'll use some tweezers to pull that thread up, clip, and that extra tension on that thread from the tweezers will cause that little thread tail to just get sucked back into the fabric and I won't see it. I keep mentioning these object-based elements. What does that mean? Let's look at another program. So here I've recreated the design in Wilcom Hatch using the lettering tools there. And I've used similar fonts. I don't have the exact same fonts over here, so I had to kind of improvise. But you can see that here we are in 3D. Everything looks nice and clean. And if I turn True View off, once again, we can see the connections. So let's zoom up here. And here we can see that this one is connecting from there to there. I would have thought it would connect there, but it's not. But see where that one's connecting? It's connecting there, 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 there. And it's taking the shortest distance between the two letters. And it does that on the fly. So if I changed one of these letters, it would change the connection if it needed to. Now here's another cool thing. You can actually stitch backwards. So in the other design, it went from this N down here to the M. But on this version, I've let it stitch this backwards, so the shortest connection is from the N to the T. Just because we read left to right doesn't mean we can't stitch right to left, because when it's done, we're still reading left to right. So all these letters are fully editable. If I wanted to change the shape of that letter, I could. I can't do that in Embrilliance. Which program is better? Well, it really depends. With Embrilliance, if you've purchased lots of those stitch file alphabet sets, where each letter is in its own file, and you like them, you can suck them in with Alphatrix and turn them into keyboard fonts in just a matter of a few minutes. And since digitizers can make BX fonts from any software that they have, you have access to thousands of fonts that are drag and drop installable at a very economical price. If you're more discriminating about your lettering and you want more control, then Hatch offers the power of Wilcom font technology at just a fraction of the price of their Pro versions. Hatch fonts are created in higher levels of Wilcom. I can't even create fonts for Hatch because I only have Hatch. I don't have the studio versions. And that means that you're less likely to find auto-digitized fonts of dubious quality than you are with BX fonts. Since BX fonts can be made in any software, a lot of them are auto-digitized. You will not find auto-digitized crop for Wilcom as an installable font. They're just made by high-end people who really know what they're doing. So both Hatch and Embrilliance are modular systems. You can start with just the basics, the lettering. See, these are in order of complexity here, and lettering is one of the basic modules, so you can just get started with some basic modules and still have all this lettering power. Same with Embrilliance. Essentials offers all that power of using BX fonts. In fact, you can get a free version that just does BX fonts. Both have 30-day trials, so you can try them out and see which one best suits your needs. And compared to the big all-in-one programs that cost $2,000 and more and have features that you might never use, you may find that you can get some modules from Hatch and some modules from Embrilliance and really have the best of both worlds and still spend less than what you'd pay for one of those big all-in-one programs. So I hope this has been helpful in showing you about jumps and talking a little bit more about fonts. I got a little bit carried away with the font thing. But it's important to understand that jumps are the only way to get from one object to another when there's space between them. It's not necessarily bad digitizing. So I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching, and please come back again.